Hello again, guys. It is Drew Badger here again, the world's #1 English fluency guide, reminding you to learn things visually if you want to remember them. Today we're going to do a bit more phrasal verb magic, and let's take a look at some blocks that I have on the table here. I took these from my daughter today. Hopefully she won't miss them too much, but we're just going to use a couple of these to talk about a few, maybe some more, slightly more difficult phrasal verbs, but things that are connected with building and destroying things, because this is one set of things or one idea generally that when I'm speaking with my daughter, we're reviewing things like this, and I tend to cover opposites. So we're talking about one thing. I want to explain to her instead of how something works by explaining what it is, just by showing her the opposite. So last night we were practicing small and big, and this is just something that I can explain. If I just say, try to explain to somebody what small means without giving the opposite definition, it's quite difficult. But if you can just look at the differences in something like 1 block versus 2 blocks, then it's pretty easy to see the difference and understand what it means without having any kind of explanation. Again, this is so important to English fluency training and to learning like a native English speaker. The more pieces that you have, or the more steps that you have between where your language is or where your current level is and where you want to be, the more difficult it's going to be to get fluent. As an example, if you're trying to learn something but you want to have explanations and you want to learn it through your native language first and then try to translate it into English, all of these steps are extra things that you put into your brain to make it more difficult for you to get fluent. So don't do this. Anyway, let's look at some of these and see what we can make. So I think we covered in a previous one using the Uno cards, creating something where I'm putting something on something else. So this is the phrasal verb to put on. So we've got put. If I'm just going to put something, put one block on another block. So put on, put on, put on. Now I've got a stack of 4 blocks. Instead of saying put on, because you can use that for anything, like I put on this shirt, or I put a block on the table. Am I putting a block on the table? Yes, I am. Am I putting 1 block on another block? Yes, I am. Am I putting 2 blocks on 2 more blocks? Yes, I am. So now I have a stack of 4 blocks. Now I can also say I'm stacking them up. So if I have 4 blocks, I can stack up the blocks like this. So I'll tell my daughter, can you stack up the blocks? And then she starts stacking them up. So can you stack up the blocks? Can you stack the blocks up? Yes, I can. No, I can't. Now, you can't stack down. We don't really say this in English, but depending on how you want to disassemble this, try to think about that before I introduce what this would be. How would you call this if I'm going to do this action here? Now, what do you think I would do, or what do you think I would say in that instance? So if I have a stack, I'm stacking up blocks right now. I have a stack of 4 blocks, and I'm doing this. What action am I really doing? If you try to take a verb and a preposition, what am I doing? So if I take a verb, so a verb would be eat, drink, sleep, go, and a preposition is something like up, down. I'm taking something, and I'm putting it down. So I'm taking the stack down. I'm taking down a stack of blocks. And so this is something that you could use if you have a system of something. Again, we always start with a physical idea of how something works so you can understand it, and then we're taking that and having a more figurative idea. Like let's say I have like some building scaffolding. So scaffolding is the construction term for those little bars and things that you see on the outside of buildings when people are doing construction. So when you put up those, or you putting up scaffolding just like this, you can also take it down when you're done using it. So anything, any piece of equipment, like I used to do stereo and sound engineering back when I was in college, so we would have to set up something, we would have to build something, and then after the show or the concert was finished, we would take it down. So I'm being nice right here. I'm taking care. This is another great phrasal verb. I'm being very delicate with something. I'm taking care. So with care, I am doing something. So I'm taking the blocks down with care. Now, what my daughter usually does is this. Now, what would you call that? What would you call that? Now, in this case, I'm not taking care with it, and the verb is not take, because I'm not really taking something in a nice way. In this case, I am knocking something down, to knock something down. Now, when you knock something down, typically that thing comes in a couple of different pieces to knock something down. So if I have maybe one thing like this, let me see here. If I have, so I'll take my phone case here, or the, let's see. This might not be so good to use, but notice the difference here. We've got actually 4 individual things. And so when we hit this, I'm going to hit it violently. Well, maybe not violently. I don't want to make it too loud, but because each of these things moves in a separate location when it falls down, so we'll like that. So I'm going to hit something, and look, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 separate blocks. Now, each one of these pieces, again, because it's a separate thing, we're using knock, and we call this knocking something down, knocking something down. Now, the slight difference here is knock over. Now, knock over is usually when we have one thing like this that's one physical thing, and if I hit it, or if I make it fall, it's going to fall over like that. So I'm knocking something over. So typically you would see something like if I have a tall lamp next to me and I move quickly and I knock it and it falls down like this, I'm knocking it over, knocking it over. A block, when you have something that physically moves from a up location to a down location in a straight line, this is to fall down, fall down, fall down, fall down. But if I have something like this, this is to fall over. So if you cut a tree, the tree falls over. But again, just think about when you're talking with phrasal verbs, what actions are you really doing? What are you trying to say? Are you trying to say that it's a delicate thing you're doing, or that it's maybe a bit more violent? So are you knocking something down, or are you pushing something down? So in this case, I could maybe, if I want to push it gently, I could push it over. So I could take someone and push them over, and then they would fall like this. But if I'm maybe a bit more angry, I'm going to knock it over like that. Now, I might not be angry, but again, the speed of the action is what's important. So what's the actual verb, and then what's the actual preposition that you're trying to use in this case? So don't think about what's the actual phrasal verb that you would use, but actually try to build up an understanding of how phrasal verbs work. This is how English speakers learn to do it. And when they don't know of a specific way of explaining something, they will just create a phrasal verb in that way. And this is what you should be training yourself to do. So always be thinking about what's a physical way of understanding a phrasal verb, because every phrasal verb can be understood in this way. And I think it's pretty easy to do if you just take some time and actually look at an example like this with blocks or something like this where we have maybe one physical thing. Anyway, if you'd like to learn more about how to create phrasal verbs and how to be thinking like a native English speaker, I highly recommend you check out our visual guide to phrasal verbs, and you can learn more about this at EnglishAnyone.com, and also see some example videos right here on YouTube. Just search our channel for Visual Guide to Phrasal Verbs. And if you have more questions, do let us know in the comments below. If you're enjoying this series and you'd like to learn more, I'd be happy to show you some more physical things. Again, this is exactly how I teach my daughter and help her understand things. I'm just using very simple principles, but I want to make sure that you understand the same way that you would teach a baby is the same way that you would teach an adult in this way. So just because you're older, it doesn't mean that you need to have lots more explanations. You really should be learning things simply in the same way a child does. And this is how you do it. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you had, do click that like button, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye-bye. To continue learning, click on the link in this video to download Speak English Naturally, our free guide to speaking and sounding like a native English speaker. The guide reveals the 3 most important kinds of conversational English you must learn if you want to sound native, and will help you experience instant improvement in your fluency and speaking confidence. To download your free guide on a mobile device, click on the link in the upper right of this video. To download your free guide from a computer, click on the link in the lower right of this video. I look forward to seeing you in the guide.